Collaboration Committee. And the purpose of it is to build a strong and sustainable out of school time framework grounded in youth development best practices and that rely on the input of youth, families, OST providers, experts, and government agencies. The committee works to ensure strategic collaboration among various stakeholders, including the Deputy Mayor for Education, the OST Office, DC Public Schools, Public Charter Schools, the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, Department of Recs, Park and Recs, Department of Employee Services, libraries, and other District of Columbia government agency, OST providers, families, and youth. That is the purpose of the Coordination and Collaboration Committee, or at least this is what we are proposing. And just to note, the committees worked on developing what their purpose is. Okay, so the next one would be the Funding and Capacity Committee. The purpose is to work to ensure that all DC youth have access to diverse, high-quality programs in locations that meet the current demand for OST seats across the district. To achieve this goal, the committee works with the OST providers, small, medium, and large, to support their financial organizational, technical, and educational growth and development through the identification of and referral to capacity building resources. That will be the purpose of the Funding and Capacity Committee. The Outcomes and Needs Assessment Committee will guide the OST Commission in establishing priorities for the use of out-of-school time funding based on current OST program needs. The committee assesses the outcomes and impact of OST-affiliated government agencies providing programming and services to K-12 youth and youth across the district. The OST office shall conduct a biennial OST needs assessment and a biennial progress report, which is alternating years of the needs assessment, working across the district agencies to identify the needs for out-of-school time programs, the progress made towards meeting the targeted needs. The committee informs decision makers, the council, and other government agencies on funding needs. So that's the purpose of the Outcome and Needs Assessment Committee. This committee also will be working closely with the Funding and Capacity Committee, since part of what they're going to do is talk about funding needs with decision makers. The next committee is the Quality Committee. They work with the Learn 24 Office of Out-of-School Time Grants and Youth Outcomes, Institute for Youth Development on the implementation of program quality assessments, quality improvement planning, youth surveys, training, and coaching in support of the continuous growth and improvement of OST providers. This committee works in partnership with the Institute to identify and to determine training that provide high quality support in alignment with the needs of DC's youth. And last but not least, the Governance Committee. This is it's on an ongoing basis, reviews, revises, and updates the bylaws, examines conflicts of interest, makes changes or additions to committees, and acts on the behalf of the OST Commission in addressing urgent matters that cannot wait for the next OST Commission meeting, ensuring alignment with its best judgment of the OST Commission members' likely decisions given the circumstances. Whew, okay. So those are the changes that we are proposing that we'll be able to vote on. And so what I'd like to do right now, which is a little bit off script, which I do sometimes, when we were in a meeting, we were having a discussion about out of school time and what it means. And so as we continue, one of the things that we're going to be talking to the commission about is, what does it mean when we're talking about out of school time? What programs are included in that definition? And so we definitely will be looking to do that. Were there any questions, comments, concerns about anything that I said or read?
No questions.
Okay. Let me give it a second.
So thank you, Chair Saffron. I know we are in a bit of a holding pattern as we wait for Councilmember Fruman to be able to join us this evening. And, as we think about the situation we're in tonight, where we do not have a quorum, and as we look to just revisiting the comments made earlier, if there are any members of our community that we feel as commissioners that are not present or that we should have additional representation of, we can open that discussion to kind of talk about what our recruitment process should look like. I know we have talked about it, Chair Saffron and Vice Chair Jones in the governance committee, but if there is feedback from other commissioners, perhaps this would be an opportunity. And I know Commissioner Hanson, I think that's you. I think you're the only additional, as Commissioner Jenkins has representation here tonight, but it's not here. Just any thoughts, and especially like thinking about, the organization, obviously that you represent is a very beneficial one on this commission, and we always talk about those organizations such as DPR, DCPS, and such that are represented. But I think that you represent an organization that falls outside of those government agencies that are the type of agencies and organizations that have a stake and that are so beneficial to the work that we do. So just wondering if you have any thoughts in that regard.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let me come up mute. So the organization I work for, our coalition, the DC Out of School Time Coalition, I think has a membership of somewhere in the range of 70 or 80 DC-based out of school time programs. Many of them were funded by Learn 24, and we hold a monthly coalition meeting and just held it earlier this week. We pitched them on joining the commission and signing up for different committees as sort of an opportunity or venue for them to have some of these valuable conversations. I don't know if I have, any like super strong recommendations. I think is, a little bit of the personal touch, but also I think really everyone has a lot of demand on their times. Everyone in a nonprofit wears multiple hats. I know that's true for, our friends and partners in government. And I think just being able to sort of effectively communicate to folks the time commitment and the real value add that they can get from participating in the coalition. So we tried to, make clear that it wasn't an overwhelming time commitment. It's a couple hours every month, and through that work, collectively we could achieve X, Y, or Z. And so I feel like that's the type of messaging that we're trying to share.
Yeah, that's greatly appreciated. As we look at our membership, and we did in the last special meeting, we have representation from the various agencies, but we're supposed to have more non-governmental members than we do have governmental. And currently that is not the case. Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Lampard both are non-government, yourself, Commissioner Hanson, but overall, we do not have non-governmental representation. And so representatives from OST providers, both those that are grantees and those that are not, I think would be very beneficial. So yes, thank you so much for raising that at coalition meetings. If it would be helpful for me to send anything, and once we approve the updated language around these committees. I think that may be helpful, along with the currently scheduled times of the committees. One thing that is a little bit of a barrier is when it comes to the actual commission. As you know, Commissioner Hanson, how like we haven't got any response from MODA as it relates to the swearing in or continuous swearing in. You had posed the question around your representation on a commission, and it is just almost impossible. And I know that we were that Commissioner another one of the commissioners was going to support us looking, doing some work from another angle of trying to get some response from MODA, but we don't even know. There may be those folks that do apply, right? And I've had several that I have spoke to, and organizations and individuals that I have encouraged to apply, and they may have. The folks on the coalition that you spoke to may apply, but if we aren't being them, like that's just another kind of nail in the opportunity to build trust that is deflating that trust. So that's one huge barrier. But to that, when it comes to the committees, they do not have to be commissioners, and they could join. We were talking about doing like a real big recruitment across the summer months, given that we don't really operate as a commission during the summer months. So we don't want people to join and then us not having meetings, but looking to have folks join these committees for the fall, starting in August timeframe. So anyway, just wanted to give some feedback in regards to barriers we're facing around that, as well as ways around it through committee participation.
I think the only thing I would add to that is, I'm sorry, please go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, please.
Oh, I was gonna say, I do think a one pager, outlining here is our calendar of meetings for the year, and these are the committees and the time that they meet at would be really helpful. I know folks are able to participate on committees without being a commissioner, but I do sort of look back at last couple commission meetings we had where I think we took some really valuable votes, like around whether or not we want to do an annual, progress report or strategic plan. And when we were finalizing the strategic plan, did we want to, real number goals in terms of how many seats we're trying to expand to and things like that. And I would hate for someone to do the work on a committee and then not have the ability to, especially if they're a non-governmental employee, I'd really hate for them to not have the ability to vote on the work that they did. And so I do think if MODA is not being responsive, hopefully that changes over the summer. But I think we should think about that, and we could raise it at oversight next year. I know when I applied to join the commission, if memory serves, it was like, I don't know, 6 months or more for the approval process, which felt like a very long time. And I think a lot of other folks would probably give up if their application took that long. And so if MODA is being unresponsive to you, I think there are other ways we could incentivize them to, do a quicker turnaround, or at least get back to us on some of these questions.
Agreed. I'm watching attendance. I know that I see that Elias has just joined us. Good evening. Elias, we are currently waiting for Council Member Fruman to join us. Do you have any updates?
Good evening. He should be on in just a second. Appreciate the patience and sorry for.
Wonderful.
That's fine.
No, not a problem. Yeah, we're just ready to transition and happy he'll be available shortly.
I'm going to stop sharing because I want to be able to see faces. So now is a great time to think about any questions you may have. Um, since we have the council member right here with us, this is a great opportunity to get clarity. I knew that there were some changes made to the reporting requirements that I was able to see not that long ago. I want to say yesterday. My days running together at this point. It was yesterday or the day before. Um, based on some of the conversations that we had previously. So it'll be interesting to hear about that transition as well. There's Elias. You're on mute if you're talking to us.
Sorry, I was just calling the council member. As we all know, Teams is not always super cooperative, so he's trying to get on at the moment.
There he is.
Hey, how you doing?
Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
Very good. Good to see you all.
Good to see you as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, my pleasure.
We are very excited to hear from you directly about this universal out of school time bill.
Uh-huh. So shall I start off giving some remarks and then we can have a back and forth with questions and answers?
Absolutely.
Okay, so terrific. Let me get myself set up. Thank you, Chair Safran and OST Director Dr. Lowe and all the commission members for having me here this evening with you. Um, I want to say that the work of the Out of School Time Office and the commission to date has been really remarkable, and it's been wonderful to see all of the different things that you have been able to accomplish and the commitment that the mayor and the DME have had to trying to make sure that we have as successful of an out of school time program as humanly possible. I think all of us are very big boosters of the idea of these programs and want to make sure that they reach as many kids as possible and reach the kids with the greatest needs as possible. Um, the work that you've done so far has really been great. We know from the data, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but what the impact of out of school time programming can be. And we also are seeing a world in which juvenile crime is at a place that breaks all of our hearts every week in one way or another. And we know this is one of those ways that we can be effective in preventing juvenile crime. Among all the data points that are put out there, the idea that I forget the percentage of police chiefs who've said that out of school time programming is the most effective deterrent for juvenile crime it may be 85%. It's a little bit, it's a little lighthearted. I'm older than anybody on here, and it used to be there was a commercial growing up. 4 out of 5 dentists surveyed supported some kind of toothpaste, and it always puts me in the mind of that when I think about this. But I mean, it's really a thing that ought to and does hit home for you and for me. I have been focused on trying to create opportunities for our children for close on 20 years. I got into public service as an advocate for schools. Actually, it's longer than that because my whole entry into politics started when I was a small child and my mother would run the campaigns for millages to raise taxes to support the schools. And I would be out there going door to door and working the polls on election day to try to support the schools. And a lot of what I have done in the last 60 years after that grows out of that commitment, and mostly my focus has been on in-school programming. I'm not entirely a newcomer to out of school time. I've been aware of what out of school time does. My wife ran an aftercare program at Janney Elementary, and I saw what that program meant to all of the families at Janney Elementary. It's a little bit, it's parallel to what I think is so much on our minds of trying to make sure kids who don't live in the Janney community have access to the same kinds of things, and how critically important that is. I also have a bunch of out of school time providers in my community, as it happens, because it's a growing area, and I've been seeing and hearing all of the different things that people are doing and how effective it is. We still are in a place where there's a whole lot of children who don't have access to these programs, and we want to make sure that they get access to these programs. And it's with that background that I came to this idea of doing legislation on this subject. And this is one where a little bit of a mea culpa and a rookie thing, in that I should have consulted more closely with, period, with the OST office, the commission, and the DME as we were putting together our package of legislation. We always knew that our package of legislation was not going to be, this is it, my way or the highway. We always knew that we were going to put ideas out there, and then there was going to be an iterative process of working with key stakeholders to make sure that we got it right. We still should have done more, and it's frankly my style to try to do more, talking to all of the different stakeholders out there to make sure we were as close to the target as we possibly could with what we came out with. Part of, I'll be candid, part of the reason that we wanted to get out there, and we got out there in the winter, was we wanted to impact the budget process. We wanted to signal broad support for out of school time to the mayor and to other members of the council, so that out of school time would be as fully funded as possible in this difficult budget season. I very much wanted a hearing on the bill before the budget was finalized, because I wanted to hear, input and critiques, but a parade of people coming in front of the council talking about how important and how impactful this could be, with the idea that it could have an impact on the budget. I am pleased that in a very difficult budget year, out of school time was not hurt. Out of school time was essentially held harmless, which I actually think is a reflection of the showing of support that the programs are getting. We one of the things that we're still hearing about right now is providers needing to pay security costs, and we want to try to work with our colleagues in the budget process to try to make sure that we are doing everything we can to support our providers and not imposing extra costs on them that detract from their ability to provide services. So we put the legislation out, and the idea of the legislation was to gather information and to create a framework and a driver to get to full access to out of school time. One of the things that I have been focused on is, I mentioned Janney aftercare, and I think there's the data shows low penetration in Ward 3. I actually think penetration in Ward 3, while it's different, is higher than it's shown. There's a lot of the PTAs in Ward 3 that sponsor different kinds of programs after school, and that And if we accounted for that, then the target of what we needed to achieve in order to get to effectively full access to out of school time might look smaller than it does when you're not counting for that. There's also some number of children who are in sports programs where an out of school time that operates in some ways as their out of school time program. There's children who are working. I think gathering information, getting our arms around exactly who's out there, who we're missing, who we need to reach is very important, and prioritizing how we reach them with a focus on our at-risk children and our Black and brown children, I think is an important thing. So information gathering is an important element of what we wanted to do. There were a couple of things in the legislation, I think, that that hit a sour note with some of the folks in the out of school time world. One of them was the cap of 7% on overtime on overhead in the out of school time office. We came up with that based on what we've been hearing from the DME about what the actual overhead has been, and I think the indication was it was more like 6%. And so we put something in because we want to make sure that as many of the dollars reach the children as possible. That's the kind of thing, had we had a back and forth with you, maybe that number would have been different. We really want to work with you to get to a place where everybody is comfortable with what we're talking about. Would love to have we would like to have guardrails, but we want guardrails that people think are sensible. Guardrails give everybody a level of confidence. And so I think let's work together to figure out what that could look like. There was also, I think, folks found jarring the idea of 4+ months of notice before a change in the program, in the way that the application process worked. Some of that came from things we'd been hearing from providers where there was frustration with a need to reapply every year, and where they felt like the rules changed and it created uncertainty for them as they moved into the next school year. And we wanted to find a way to create more stability so that providers were spending more time serving children than preparing to do the next application. I think you guys are doing things in that space already. I think we're moving increasingly into a world of multi-year contracts and things like that, which I think is something that's very healthy. And I think we want to work with you to figure out, again, how do we foster that kind of stability so that we're not having folks have to, reinvent the wheel and a different wheel every year or every other year. This is not a thing that's unique in the out of school time world. This is everywhere throughout the DC government. And so this is the kind of thing that we want to do here, but also in lots of other places. I guess the last one that I'll focus on for now is, I think we talked about 90% of the programming going through community-based organizations. And we do think, and this is a thing we need to have more conversation with as we're moving down the road, we do think that community-based organization sector in this space is great. And just like we would want to have an impact on how the rules change and make the application and reapplication process as simple as possible, we do want to create some stability in that sector, which I think is super valuable. And we see a ton of innovation in the folks in that sector doing all kinds of interesting things. And that's a thing that we want to encourage. And that's where that 90% comes from. Again, this is nothing in what we put out is intended to be etched in stone. Everything that we put out is intended to be a prompt to further strengthen the phenomenal work that you've already been doing, and to work together to try to create a framework going forward where we can just build increasing support for programs like this, which are so important. I think I'd like to stop there. I hope it gives you a sense of where I was coming from when I put out the legislation. I hope you will take me, will accept my apology for not doing consulting in the run-up to coming out. And I hope you hear as loudly and clearly as possible that where I want to be going forward is partnership to try to push this forward so we can serve our kids, particularly our kids with the greatest needs.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, of course, we accept your apology. We are here. We want to work together as partners to do what's best for all the youth in DC. I know that there are some people who probably have some questions about the bill or maybe some feedback that they'd like to share. And so I'm opening the floor for people to be able to ask questions. Anyone have any?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you, Kelly. Hi, Councilmember Fruman. I'm Maddie. I'm with the PCSB, and we're just curious what the reasoning was behind removing public charter schools as a group that are with the ability to accept and apply for funds.
Well, I'd have to go back and look at it. I think we were trying to keep a focus on the CBOs, and so that could be a reason for it, but we can revisit that.
Sounds good.
Elias,
We can talk more about that.
Okay, so I mean, Elias, do you have a recollection of that?
No, but I'd be happy to follow up, and I put my email in the chat. Would definitely like to have a conversation with you all.
Yeah, sounds great.
And just for some context, it may be helpful to know, currently Learn 24 grants, just from the OST office, I'll speak on behalf of our office. We do, all of our grants are available to nonprofits, anyone with a 501c3 status, and that does include charter schools. So as you take a look at that, that might be, where there is some delineation that you may reconsider, that if it includes nonprofits, that would include charter schools. Our My After School DC grants did open it up to allow public schools to apply. We did not have any public schools apply. I think it's pretty clear that the teachers and administrators have enough work and would much rather the out of school time providers take the lead, but we definitely want collaboration and did require in that process a coordination process and a statement of collaboration between the priority school, that be it a public school or both DCPS or charter school, as a part of that collaboration. But we did not have any DCPS schools apply. We did have, as we do in all of our competitions, charter schools apply.
And the same is true at IC. So
yeah, so I mean, it should be open to or not open to both. So if the idea is that it's open to both, then it's open to both. We do, very much want to foster and support the CBO community. So I guess I would, and we can have more of a conversation about this, but I think that I wouldn't want to see like large numbers of DCPS or charter school programs at the expense of the CBO community. But let's have a conversation about that. It should equal access is a fair principle. So apologies for if we created something that didn't have equal access.
one of the things to think about is that whole concept of partnerships. So when they apply, it could be a charter school and a CBO. or DCPS and CBOs. Like, it doesn't have to not include CBOs, but not exclude charter schools, so it's a way to make it all work.
So work with us. Let's figure out how to express that.
Not a problem.
Yeah, and that was language we did use in the My After School DC, where it did have to be a collaboration with a CBO if a school, be it charter or DC public, were applying, that they had to partner with a CBO or multiple CBOs to administer the program.
So that's getting it. That's getting at what I was raising. So let's figure out how to get the words right in any final legislation.
Any other questions or comments?
And
I
frankly,
know
to the
Commission. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
somebody has their hand up, but to the extent that that's an issue, I would want to. We might even want to revisit it, get it clear before there's a hearing, so that we don't have to spend a lot of time on something where that's not an issue. I mean, I don't think we want to rewrite the whole everything about the legislation. There's different things that I think we all want to chew on together, and we want to be getting your input, and everybody wants to be hearing from folks, but we don't want a false flag issue to be out there and be a distraction to a discussion on the other subjects. So let us think about how we deal with that possibility.
Kevin.
Thank you. Good evening, Councilmember Fruman. Hi, Elias. I actually have a statement from one of our commissioners who's my chairperson for the Quality Committee. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to read. And she wasn't able to be here this evening, but asked if I could just read it on her behalf. And it's Commissioner Berkey, who also represents DCPS. And the statement reads, the Quality Committee had two major concerns with the bill. First was regarding the provision that a quality assessment system be established. And of course, the bill reads paragraph 10 is amended to read as follows. 12710A, develop in collaboration with the commission plans for assessing the quality of out-of-school time programs, and then B, create and implement a plan to improve the quality of and supports of out-of-school time programs funded in part or in whole by the district. Our committee wants to emphasize that DC uses the nationally recognized gold standard for program quality assessment, and it is administered by Learn24's Institute for Youth Development with grant-funded partners, including OSSI's 21st Century Learning Center grantees. Part of the Weichart Program Quality Assessment System includes the development of improvement plans based on data with aligned training programs to address deficiencies that will strengthen program quality. The PQA training, along with the wide array of additional training provided by the Learn24 Institute, constitutes a robust approach to quality assessment and methods for improving quality. And the second concern, of course, which we've talked about, but I'll go ahead and read it on her behalf, was regarding the cap on the overhead of the OST office, where it does state about the 7% of the annual budget for the appropriations. The quality committee statement is, if the quality improvement training system of Learn24 is considered an overhead cost, the cap could limit the capacity of Learn24's institute to improve program quality, provide coaching, and deliver more training to address specific populations such as students with special needs or multilingual learners, and be prevented from developing internal staff capacity to support the quality assessment and training system by being reliant on consultants whose work and contracts are at the mercy of the city's procurement process. The inability to have a Learn24 staff team associated with program quality and dependence on consultants has already delayed some key points in fiscal 24. We would like clarity about whether the work of the Institute is included in what the legislation views as an overhead expenditure. And that's it. Thank you.
So, well, thank you. So, I mean, that is exactly the kind of feedback that we need. That's, I mean, the way I interpret it is, it's not there's been a lot of work done in creating a quality framework already, so don't act like it hasn't happened. And then the second thing is on the overhead side, that be careful about limiting overhead depending on what's in it, because if it infringes on our ability to maintain high quality, that's cutting off your nose to spite your face. And so how we make sure that we have gotten that right, I don't have the answer this evening, but that is exactly the kind of thing that is super useful to get.
Great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Anyone else? Along those same lines, I'm sorry, I'm going to piggyback on what you were just saying from Commissioner Berkeley. When we talk about overhead costs, I'm not sure if that's the needs assessment cost will be included in that, or if that's something completely different. Because we're obviously going to have to get a contractor for the needs assessment that's going to be done every other year. So is that part of that 7%? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say right now, except to say the 7% is already a thing that needs to be the topic of a conversation, and what fits inside of the 7% or whatever percentage is chosen. Maybe the way we do it is careful definition of what is overhead and what is not. But without not wanting to get too deep into trying to like hammer that kind of thing out, that it's a thing that needs to be hammered out 100%.
And the other thing that I believe we discussed a little bit that needed to be hammered out was the idea of what constitutes an out-of-school time program. That definition is going to be key to help us determine who are we actually collecting data from. Like programs that are 1 hour a week, programs that are 15 hours a week, programs that are like, so there's such a wide range. And so we have to truly figure out what it means when you talk about out-of-school time program.
So I think that's absolutely super, yet also true. I mean, for two reasons. One, we don't want to, or a couple reasons. We don't want to treat programs as equal. If one is once a week and the other is 5 days a week, one has got a sustained curriculum. They're not the same, and we don't want to create a path where people check the box and say they've done what they need to do by doing a minimum. So it's not just that we want the occasional thing for a child after school or in the summer. We want meaningful things for very high percentages of our children. So totally get it. It's also, it has a segue in a way, and let's work together with what I was saying about, it may be that in just my personal experience, that a Janny aftercare program doesn't qualify as a out of school time program, but also maybe thought needs to be given as to whether or not we need as a city to feel an obligation to replace it with something else when the need for the more vigorous program is greater in other places, and what's happening at Janny is meeting the need at Janny. So, and the same, how do we deal with participation in sports, which I think is a very positive thing, and it's not an how do we define and account for that? There's stuff to do here.
Appreciate it. Other thoughts, comments, questions, feedback? I'm surprised at how quiet people are. Tiara, yes, please.
Oh, yes, I am so sorry. It's a little bit chaotic on my side of town. Name is Tiara, last name Stewart. I serve as the Chief Program Officer with DC Scores. And unfortunately, due to this weather this spring, we've had to reschedule so many games. So I was field marshaling a game between Lucky and Venice. So I'm still on my way home with my daughter in the background, just to give you that quick context in case you hear her. But first of all, I just want to say thank you so much, council member, for making the time to come to this meeting and speak to the commission. And it is very exciting to see that there's going to be some type of collaboration between the two to make sure that we get this as close to the nail as possible. I just have a very quick comment in relation to some of the things that we've been seeing and how we've been impacted. We are currently partnering with 67 different schools across DC, serving 3,000 kids, and 300 coaches are teachers that are coming out of the school day to support us in implementing our programming directly in their school buildings. But one of the biggest things we've been running into, which you could really see in our youth voice in their poetry when they're speaking about gun violence, or just the grief that our coaches are even dealing with from losing young people in their community, or gunshots going on around our games and having to put the teams on lockdown. And like, one of the biggest things that I'm realizing we need is to address the mental health impact of not just the growing violence that is happening in the community, but really still having reckoned with the impact of the pandemic on our young people, especially at that middle school level. And I'm being put in a position because right now we pay for all the transportation to and from the game days, all of our events. We have a partnership with DCU and the Spirit. We literally pay for the buses for them to go to those games. And as you can imagine, that is extremely expensive, but we understand in order to have access to a quality out of school time program, transportation is needed. So I know I'm going back and forth between mental health resources and transportation. I just want to emphasize the importance of out of school time programs needing the additional resources, one, to prepare our coaches on what it means to facilitate restorative circles, healing engagement, that the Weikart Center methods and trainings don't completely address, because I am certified in both the original methods and their social emotional learning methods and framework as well. But there's a cultural awareness and equity lens that is still missing out of the Weikart Center. And there are other groups who really have nailed this, but we don't have the additional resources to be able to pay for all these things that we need to equip the people who got to go back in and pour into our people and make sure that they're good, and also make sure our kids can get to and from the program safely without blowing up our budget. So I just want to emphasize that, and I'm gonna put myself back on mute. And again, thank you to the commission and council member for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, what a phenomenal program you guys do. It's really, really great. And the problems that are plaguing our children when they're in school don't go away after the last bell. And so the mental health issues, we really need to be doing what we can on that during the school day, and to the extent that we have kids. And, frankly, like a program like yours that with sports and people jostling around, like, it's not hard for something to happen where you have a conflict. And so being in a position to deal with those things and to address the emotional needs of the kids, super, super important. Same thing on transportation. Now we have safe passages, and there's a lot of focus on, how kids in particular neighborhoods get from here to there safely and feel safe. They're in an out of school time program. It may be that their movement is after the safe passages period. We need to be focused on kids' safety and transportation. I hear you. Not 100% sure how to deal with that in the context of this legislation, but I think if there is a hearing on out of school time legislation, it creates a forum for folks like yourself to make that point and remind people of that need and how that gets addressed, whether it's in this legislation or it's something different. It's an important idea to put on the table.
Thank you. We have about 5 minutes left for this conversation. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Tara. the suggestions and ideas that you said that you guys would have, I would definitely recommend that you email Elias, and he did put his information in the chat. Okay. Well, thank you, Councilmember Fruman, for joining us. Any parting words that you have for us?
You know, thank you very much for taking the time to have this conversation, to hear from me about where I'm coming from. I think it's one foot in front of the other, and let's work together to try to get something that everybody is excited about and that is a platform for building support for these programs and helping as many of our children who need our help the most as we can.
Thank you very much. We look forward to our next gathering, where we'll be able to meet with you and talk a little bit more about where we're going, what we're doing, and how we can collaborate. Because if I remember correctly, that wasn't our one and only meeting. So you'll meet with the OST office again, and we'll continue to collaborate.
100%. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you. And thank you, Elias, for being here.
All right.
Thank you all so much.
Bye. Hi, Riley. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you all. You were actually a lot more quiet than I expected, but that's okay. If you have questions, again, please make sure you email Elias. And if there are things that you want us to be thinking about while we're having those meetings, please make sure you let us know as well. Okay. I am really big on, if we don't have anything to discuss, I don't want to keep you longer. And so at this time, what I will be doing is saying thank you very much. And we don't even have enough people, so I don't even have to get someone to make a motion. So it is 7:08. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful holiday weekend, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Thank you, Chair Saffron.
Have a good night.